Your daily fix of women's mixed martial arts from the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. Be in the loop, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your fix on women's MMA. We've got you covered on Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel De Leon, wishing that your day is going well. Whoever you are, wherever you are, hopefully your day is going well. 2021, new year, new, fresh start. Let's keep things going, as today's episode will be an entire news brief. Things are getting kind of slow in terms of MMA action. So, one championship, Invicta, Bellator, UFC, all those events are going to start piling up next week right now. So, for the past 2 weeks, it's like, alright then, just news. But as the month goes on, I'm going to be overwhelmed here with a whole lot of action, with a whole lot of sports happening here. I don't think One Championships has a women's mixed martial arts bout coming up, but there are a lot of things coming up for BKFC and for the UFC. I'm not sure if I should cover BKFC, considering that it's not mixed martial arts, but still, we're having fighters like Paige Van Zandt going over to Bare Knuckle FC, and also Paige Van Zandt, she's currently training with Amanda Ribas, the person who pretty much got her out of the UFC. So, what's going on in the world of women's mixed martial arts? Well, first off, we got Paige Van Zandt. It's coming from WMMA rankings, written in by Noah. Paige Van Zandt details how her family and coaches were initially against her signing with BKFC Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships. Paige Van Zandt is set to make her BKFC debut on February 5 when she takes on Britton Hart in the main event of Knucklemania. So Van Zandt, who's 8-5 in her MMA career, 0-0 in her BKFC career, left the UFC last year after losing to Amanda Ribas via submission in the very first round. Following the loss, 26-year-old adopted to not re-sign with the UFC or any MMA promotion, but instead enter the brutal world of bare knuckle boxing. During a recent chat with Morning Combat, Paige Van Zandt opened up about how her family and coaches were initially against her signing up to be a bare knuckle boxer. And here's her quote. "I'm doing it for nobody but myself. I'm doing it because it sounds awesome. How many people could say that they are a professional bare-knuckle boxer? It's a huge moment for my career. Honestly, at first, my husband was like, no, you are not doing this. And then my mom was against it. I had some coaches against it, but once I signed the contract, everybody is on board. They have to, because they're supporting me through it all. Now, going to the fights is so exciting. My husband was like, this is awesome. Maybe I want to do it too. The money was great, and of course, that's going to be a part of it, but number two was that this is awesome. For me to have bragging rights as a bare-knuckle fighting professional boxer was a big part of it. In this new transition, I think people will see that I really do love to fight. I am transitioning into this barbaric sports. I'm not doing this to prove a point, to prove to anybody. I'm doing it because I want to. I think it looks badass, and I want to. You might get cut open, but I have been cut open in fights before. It's no big deal for me. I get to show how tough I am." Paige Van Zandt reflected on the ending of her UFC career and the pressure she felt on her shoulders. Right now, the former Dancing with the Stars runner-up, which she is, still astounding that the UFC never capitalized on that, has this to say, and I quote, "For me, I feel the ending of my career in the UFC. I did feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. Right now, I feel nothing like that. I'm here to take over and show the world how good I am. I feel like I'm finally in a place where I can develop my striking. And I know I am so confident going into this. I know I've made every sacrifice to win, and that's what I'm going to do." Of course, like anybody, you wish your job would do more for you. You wish that you would get paid more. But at the end of the day, you have to do for yourself. And a lot of things I get by myself. Going to Dancing with the Stars, we got that. That was me and my manager. I feel like the UFC does a good job building the stars. They really do. But I felt like I needed to take control, and that's what I'm doing here. I feel like I'm writing out of my own destiny, and I'm at the point in my life where I don't need an organization to be relevant. I am relevant completely by myself. And I truly feel that's why I can bring so much to these organizations. So, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship Knucklemania takes place on February 5th, 2021 from Tampa Bay, Florida. Hey, my cousin lives there. This event will be aired live worldwide on pay-per-view on Fight TV. So, what do you think about that? Well, good on for Paige Van Zandt. I always say that Paige Van Zandt... Okay, I don't know what you people think about this, but I think Paige Van Zandt, she's ahead of the curve. She's ahead of the curve. She's a genius. She's a marketing genius. And that she's one of those fighters who gets it. And when I say I get it, she gets it, I mean there's two ways of getting it. So, here's how, okay, I gotta mention this guy all the time because he just bothers the heck out of me. There are two types of fighters out there. Alright, three types of fighters. So, here's one type of fighter. We got the Hannah Cyphers of the world here. We got fighters who see this as an opportunity. They don't see this as like a career. They see it as an opportunity. They go there, they make the money, and they leave. That's one type of fighter. Another type of fighter are the... What is it? What did Rachel Ostovich? No, not Rachel. It'd be, I guess, Chael Sonnen, because I have to bring up Chael Sonnen all the time. We have the Chael Sonnens out there in the world. The Chael Sonnens, the Colby Covington, the Ben Askrens out there. Fighters who recognize that there is a ceiling in their overall potential, who recognize there is a ceiling in the current scheme of things in mixed martial arts. And when I say ceiling, I mean, when you compare the potential financial ceiling for MMA fighters compared to the financial ceilings for an NBA player, it is night and day. Even Daniel Cormier has talked about this, where I'm not saying that he's like, I'm not saying he's a little, okay, Daniel Cormier is a great fighter, but he never, I believe, if he was younger when he came to the UFC, he could have accomplished a lot more. I think there's still a lot of things Daniel Cormier could still do now, but you know what? That's another topic. Maybe Daniel Cormier says, you know what? Yeah, we're not making as many fighters as those other athletes and other organizations, but you got to make the most of what you have here. And I'm happy that I was able to make the most of what I can here. There's this hustle aspect into being a signed fighter for an organization, which is weird because you shouldn't be hustling if you're part of the organization. But then we have fighters like John Jones, even fighters like Jorge Masvidal. John Jones, Jorge Masvidal, Kamaru Usman, Paige Van Zandt. Fighters with the mentality that they know that they are... Conor McGregor is most like Conor McGregor, Khabib, Tony Ferguson. Fighters who understand that they are capable of breaking that glass ceiling where you can create and develop your own brand, and you yourself as an athlete becomes greater or is more valuable than the organization, how they perceive you. So if you look at the NBA right now, so the NBA kind of has this problem right now where the players have too much freedom, and even the fans, they are very vocal about player movement right now. They are against the NBA teams or the organizations or the promoters. They are against, generally, fans and players are against the idea of an organization, of a sport organization, taking advantage of their athletes, and it should be the athletes who should be shooting the shot here. Now, that's the exact opposite of the UFC. That's the exact opposite. You can never, there's no way a person with a personality and the success of LeBron James can ever see eye to eye with somebody like Dana White. Because both of them have very different philosophies on how a sport organization should be run. We got LeBron James, who believes sport organizations should be run through the athletes, while Dana White believes sport organizations should be run through people who are running upper management. Even Dana White has gone to say where he really doesn't like it when these athletes, these fighters, are trying to be business people, because he believes that they're not smart enough to be business people or incapable of being able to be that successful in being a business person. So that's just Dana White. That's his viewpoint. And so Paige Van Zandt, I will say this right now, she wasn't that good of a fighter in the UFC. She had a lot of momentum going towards her, but I still remember following her on Instagram and also listening to her interviews and what she said. She goes on to say that she makes more money doing things outside the UFC. She makes more money doing sponsorships, doing modeling. She makes a lot more money just like selling things on Instagram. I think Paige Van Zandt said it herself. This was especially evident in her fight before Amanda Ribas. Paige Van Zandt was incredibly vocal in the fact that she believes she's way more valuable than the UFC Caesar, and that's because she makes a lot more money doing things outside of the UFC. I agree with what Paige Van Zandt says, and that the UFC does a really good job building stars, same way the Cleveland Cavaliers did a good job building up LeBron, but at some point, LeBron James has to be like, alright, I don't need you to guide my own career. And we're going towards that point right now in the UFC, and I say Paige Van Zandt's like one of those fighters. She's a trailblazer. She really is. Because upon her leaving, signed for BKFC, we then see fighters like, Fabricio Verdum. We see fighters like Leon Edwards right now. Yoel Romero getting cut. But there seems to be a lot of fighters in the UFC currently being very vocal about fighter pay and are saying, hey, if I don't get treated right here in this company, I can go move to another organization. And, 13 years ago, 15 years ago, even I'd say even like 8 years ago, you could be like, well, that's not the case. Like, the UFC, that's where you need to be. Kind of like the WWE in pro wrestling, where, like the WWE, UFC was the organization to go to. There's no other alternatives. Now, at this point, there are a lot of fighters with alternatives. You can go to Bellator. You can go to PFL. You can go to One Championship. One Championships has one of the best women's divisions in the entire world. And Bellator, they're really emphasizing and they're trying to build an entire women's division based around Cris Cyborg right now. I firmly believe that in the next 5 years, we're going to see player and athlete movement coming in from MMA. And 5 years from now, you could be like, wait, which one of the fighters who kind of led the player movement or the athlete movement? You could say Paige Van Zandt. Yes, Paige Van Zandt, she's not necessarily the biggest name out there. She's still a big name, but she's one of those fighters who can transcend beyond the sport there. And that's not me being like, oh man, Paige Van Zandt, she's great because she's like really pretty looking. No. If you look at Paige Van Zandt's social media following, the fact that she is as successful as she is in the UFC, considering what her record is, considering how much followers she has right now, considering the fact nowadays that almost everybody now is trying to go and make money through alternative means that go beyond just the organization you're working for, i.e. hustling. I read a report out there that this probably is a lot more higher now, but 49% of Americans nowadays are hustling and are finding alternative means of making money that go beyond just working off one or two jobs. Heck, there's a statistic out there where about 40% of people nowadays are making money through 3 different channels. And during Paige Van Zandt's lead up to her fight against Amanda Ribas, Paige Van Zandt said, you know what, I'm holding back on my sponsorships, I'm holding back on the ad revenue, I'm holding back on me modeling, I'm holding back and all these opportunities to do these other things, just so I can go and finish up my UFC contract. If you remember to the build-up for her fight against Amanda Ribas, man, she did all the right things for the interview, saying, I want to be a champion, I want to be the next big thing, I want to be able to compete amongst the top 5, I want to be in an elite company. Paige Van Zandt, on the other hand, she was like, you know what? I'm just here to go and fight, finish my contract, I'm going to make money, but that money really is insignificant, honestly. I'm just doing this for, so I can get out of here. And then, after the fight, the fight lasted a minute only. I think it was a minute 15 seconds. The fight lasted. And then when Paige Van Zandt, she was saying that she was going to go leave, Dana White says, okay, sure, whatever. Dana White pretty much said, you know what, if Paige Van Zandt wants to be a free agent, good on her for that. And we're getting to a point, also this recently happened with Anthony Rumble Johnson, where Dana White's like, now, you know what, Anthony Rumble Johnson, he wants to go and go to some other organization. Alright, let him do that. Let these fighters do what makes them happy. We'll still keep on going. And if you heard John McCarthy's interview on John McCarthy's podcast, where he said that there are a lot of fighters coming in. We got fighters coming in from the Contender Series, fighters coming in from the... we're going to have another Ultimate Fighter season coming up. We're going to have another Ultimate Fighter season coming up in just a couple months from now. And according to John McCarthy, these fighters who are getting these new contracts get paid horribly. They get paid horribly. They get 6-figure contracts, but it takes them years to get that 6-figure contract. So, really, you're not really making that much bank at a per year basis, really. You really are not. So, we're seeing this influx of fighters saying, hey, I don't want to go compete for the UFC. I can do other things. I can make a whole lot of money doing other stuff. The UFC are not bothered by this. They are constantly getting influx of talents. They're getting... remember, in the month of January, we're expecting 50 more people to get let go. in the UFC. Rachel Ostovich just got let go, and she's one of those fighters who, just like Paige Van Zandt, I'm like, you know what? I don't have to be worried. Rachel Ostovich, you can definitely get a job at PFL 1, BKFC, Bellator. It can happen. I'm not worried about that. Whatever Paige Van Zandt wants to do with her career, you know what? That's all on her, and if she's happy, then she's happy. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA podcast. Come back after a short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info. Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back, and so coming up this Saturday is the return of UFC Fight Island. It's going to be UFC Fight Island number 7. Coming up this Saturday, January 16, main event going to be Calvin Keator versus Max Holloway. What to expect from the one from this show? Well, we got Yanan versus Edwards and Moraes versus Mello. Their fight's going to be aired live on ESPN Plus noon Eastern Time. The main event card will be followed on ABC and ESPN Plus at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And so, former UFC fighter Nadiya Kasim set to make her professional debut in boxing March 27. So while Paige Van Zandt, she's set to go and make her debut in bare knuckle fighting, we got Nadiya Kasim making her debut in professional boxing. So, former UFC fighter Nadiya Kasim set to enter the world of professional boxing on March 27. Kasim, who is 5-2 in her MMA career, 0-0 in her pro boxing career, was released from the UFC contract last year following a 1-2 run to which she picked up a victory over Alex Chambers, but lost out to Montana Del Rosa and Ji-Yeon Kim. The 25-year-old, who trains out of the Australian top team in Sydney, has finished 4 of her careers by way of knockouts and looks to continue showing off her striking when she enters the sport of professional boxing. Also known as 187, Kasim's professional boxing debut will take place on March 27 on the Gunnedah Town Hall in Gunnedah, New South Wales, Australia. Kasim's opponent at the event will be Paris Britonshaw, a fellow Australian who will be also seeking her professional debut in boxing. The bout between the pair will be contested in the super bantamweight division, which in boxing is held at 118 pounds. So gunner for that. Okay, so just like Paige Van Zandt, I don't get why Paige Van Zandt's family, why they would be like, why would you want to be, fighting in BKFC? Well, guess what? Both Paige Van Zandt and Nadiya Kasim, heck, you can even argue that one championship strawweight champion, Zhang Jinan, they're all great boxers, and it makes sense for them to go transition to a sport, except for Zhang. It makes sense for Kasim and Van Zandt to go and dial in and focus in on just a boxing-based sport as opposed to mixed martial arts. Because one of the problems with Paige Van Zandt was that although Paige Van Zandt was decent, so was Kasim's decent also in the ground game. It was most evident that they preferred fighting through stand-up. And so now they're going towards a career where they're primarily just going to fight standing up now, which is, good on them for that. So when they do train for a fight, it's going to be a lot less hectic, a lot less pressure on them. When Van Zandt said there's a lot of pressure on their shoulders, well, you know what? Yeah, that's understandable, because when you're fighting in a mixed martial arts fight, you have to worry about so many things. Watching One Championships has really changed how I perceive overall fighting or in the combat sports, because they have MMA, they have kickboxing, and they have Muay Thai championship belts. And it always astounds me in a kickboxing or in a Muay Thai bout that they can go throw in all these incredibly reckless leg kicks and body kicks that definitely wouldn't be thrown at an MMA bout here. Because when you see an MMA bout and you're seeing someone throw in a body kick or a leg kick or lunging in for a strike, they're worried about the takedown. They really are. And in Muay Thai and kickboxing, I've seen instances where these fighters are just constantly throwing these high volley of strikes that wouldn't work in MMA. And in Muay Thai specifically, I've seen fighters throwing out body kicks, their opponent catches it, then they do a leg trip, and then the fight just resets. And I'm so used to fighters catching the leg trip, takedown, working them from guard to half guard to side control to mount position. That's something that I'm very used to. But instead, for Muay Thai and kickboxing, body kick, leg kick, there's almost like no penalty. Because you're not losing points, nor are you gaining points for doing leg trips at all in Muay Thai or in kickboxing. And for Kasim and Paige Van Zandt, that's one aspect of the fight game that they can go and be more relaxed with. They can go throw heck, Amanda Ribas and Paige Van Zandt, their last bouts ended up with Van Zandt going in there, then she gets taken down, and then she gets pummeled and loses. That's how it is. And so for these two fighters to be focused in dialing in on boxing when that's a strong suit, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. And so I was discussing one championship. I'm trying to get into one. Sadly, they don't have any major women's fights happening for one championships in the month of January. But UFC President Dana White reveals that Zhang Weili, the next Strawweight title defense, will take place in Asia. That's huge. So Dana White revealed Weili Zhang's next title defense. Now we're not sure who it's going to be, but it's going to be somewhere in the large continent of Asia. Where in Asia? I don't know. Asia's pretty darn big. Alright then. Is it in India? Is it in China? Is it somewhere in the Middle East? We're not sure. All we know is it's somewhere in the large continent of Asia. So Zhang Weili has not been in action since UFC 248 in a pay-per-view event in March 2020, where she successfully defended her UFC Strawweight title belt against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. During a recent chat with Brett Okamoto on ESPN, White revealed that Weili Zhang will defend her belt later this year against either Rose Namajunas or Carla Esparza. He also revealed that the fight will take place somewhere in the continent of Asia. We're working with her right now. Obviously, the fights that everyone wants to see is her and Rose. Hopefully, we can get that done. If not, the next one in line will probably be Carla Esparza. We're looking at doing that fight this year and in Asia. Alright, okay. So, what really threw me off about this was the fact that, according to Rose Namajunas' camp, they're still actively negotiating. According to Dana White's camp, they offered Rose a contract, and now Rose is second guessing it. Like, there's no finalization, and it'd be a lot more easier if they just offered the contract to Carla Esparza, because Carla Esparza is one of those fighters who would easily, the day of, like, no negotiation, man. Do you want to fight for the title? Carla Esparza would immediately say yes. All right, then. Carla Esparza has been stuck as a gatekeeper for years at this point. And here's the ironic part about this. So, Amanda Ribas is going to go and be fighting Marina Rodriguez. Amanda Ribas is going to fight against Marina Rodriguez in the UFC pay-per-view event that's headlined by Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier later this month. And Carla Esparza initially was going to be fighting Amanda Ribas sometime in December. But that fight fell apart because Carla Esparza backed out. And now it turns out Carla Esparza might now be fighting for the title, which blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. And I understand Carla Esparza is kind of a journeyman. No, she's not she is a journeyman for the UFC Strawweight division. That she is there to try to go put over other women to compete. So, she defeated Marina Rodriguez in a very tight, close bout. But now she's being given the opportunity to go fight for the title, even though she backed up for Amanda Ribas. And now Ribas and Rodriguez are going to be fighting one another as the opening bout for a main card. Like, it's just, there's so many moving pieces happening right now. I understand why they would select Carla Esparza, because she more than any other fighter right now. Because here's the thing, when you look at the UFC Strawweight division right now, Jessica Andrade, she's unavailable. She's busy competing on flyweights. Joanna Jacek, I don't know when she's coming back. Rosa Namajunas, well, she's currently negotiating, and it turns out that negotiating with her is pretty darn difficult. It's hard to find when and where these are going to square off. Nina Anteroth and Tatyana Saurez. So Tatyana Saurez, she's not booked for anything right now, but she's expected to go fight somebody outside the top 5. And Nina Anteroth is fighting against somebody outside the top 5 right now, and Yan Shunan is unavailable. So what's going on here? Currently, the only person so far who's available, who's a legitimate contender, has to be Carla Esparza. And Claudia Cadella, that's for darn sure. And here's the weird part about it. Even though I don't want to see a Carla Esparza versus Zhang Weili fight, Carla Esparza, I'm going to say this right now, is going in as the favorite. Yeah, you wouldn't think so, right? But Carla Esparza here, this proper journeyman fighter who struggles fighting even against fighters who are 5 through 10. Carla Esparza, at least how I view it, is without a doubt going to be the biggest fight in Zhang Weili's career. Biggest fight in the sense that this will be the most difficult fight Zhang Weili is going to endure. Because, you know what? Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jacek, those two are elite fighters. 2 former women's champions. I get it. Heck, those 2 are bigger stars than Carla Esparza. Without a doubt right now. In the year of 2021, out of the 3, who is not the biggest star among the 3 of Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jacek, Carla Esparza, among those 3 former women's champions? Carla Esparza is the odd one out. In terms of marketing, in terms of appeal, okay? But even though Joanna Jacek defeated Carla Esparza is still one of the best grapplers among all the women in the UFC. She's one of the best grapplers in the entire world. I say she's the best grappler in the entire women's strawweight division. And it's hard to go from Zhang Weili and Joanna Jacek having a barn burner, one of the most exciting fights in the history of the company's, one of the greatest fights ever. Like, down the line, they're probably going to have a UFC Hall of Fame specifically for that fight. Now, we're going from that exciting fight between 2 fighters who stylistically match up. Jessica Andrade and Joanna Jacek, they stylistically match up well in terms of an excitement from the fans' perspective against Zhang Weili. But Carla Esparza, you know what she's going to do. Ring, ring, ring. Bell goes in. Esparza, if she's smart, she will just dive in there and try to get a takedown as quick as possible, man. Carla Esparza should know she is nowhere near the level of a boxer as Zhang Weili is. And at the same time, though, Zhang Weili is nowhere near the level of a wrestler that Carla Esparza will be. Here's the truth. Zhang Weili, if she were to spend the next 10 years of her life just being primarily a wrestler, she will still never be as good of a wrestler as Carla Esparza. That's how good she is. Now then, this will be a tough matchup stylistically for Zhang Weili. And also, here's also another thing to be noted. Carla Esparza usually is the one who's like ragdolling her opponents. She's the one who's like ragdolling, carrying opponents, slamming girls, picking them up. She's usually the stockier, stronger fighter when she's in the octagon. Now, she'll be fighting against Zhang Weili, who, although her wrestling, that's without a doubt her biggest weakness, she's incredibly strong. I have never seen a woman who is as strong as Jessica Andrade until I saw Zhang Weili. She's a very special fighter, and that her angling and speed and accuracy of her shots is among the very best in the UFC. She went toe-to-toe with one of the best boxers ever in Joanna Jacek, and now she's to go grapple. And the best way for Zhang Weili to get prepped up and ready for this fight, you have to go look at Carla Esparza when she fought against Joanna Jacek. Now, Joanna Jacek, her grappling isn't all that good also, but she's really good in defensive wrestling and defensive grappling here. Look at Joanna Jędrzejczyk's battle with Michelle Waterson. Because although Michelle Waterson fought strange and weird in the fight, being more of a karate fighter more than being a grappler, whatever. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is really good at stuffing takedowns, at dictating the pace of the fight here. What Zhang Weili should do in order to defeat Carla Esparza has to be a poking battle. She has to go keep away from Carla Esparza. Do what Waterson did, do what Joanna Jędrzejczyk did, make this to a long, drawn-out fight. I'm saying this now, and then for all we know, Zhang Weili can go in for like a quick one-punch knockout. But she has to go and make this fight be drawn out. Carla Esparza is a tough egg to crack. She has a very tough and enduring chin. I really doubt that... Interesting. I doubted Jessica Andrade being knocked out, but that happened. Alright then. So I could be completely wrong here. But Zhang Weili, she needs to be able to distance herself, work incredibly hard in takedown defense, do her best to handle herself from the clinching, because although Zhang Weili is strong, Carla Esparza is also really strong. We got two very physically dominant women who are used to ragdolling and picking up their opponents and being the one who's the one winning out in the clinching. And now, that's not going to happen here. It's a prototypical striker versus wrestler bout here. So, I would love to see Rose Namajunas versus Zhang Weili. That fight is most close to Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Two stellar strikers just going at it, meeting each other in the middle of the octagon and throwing out bombs. That's what I want to see. But if we see Carla Esparza versus Zhang Weili, it's not going to be as exciting a fight, but it's going to be more of a difficult fight for both women. You are listening to the GSMC Women's MMA podcast. Coming back after the short break here with the news brief. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. And so boxing champ Claressa Shields details on what she has learned from training alongside UFC stars Jon Jones and Holly Holm. Boxing superstar Claressa Shields has opened up about what she has learned since training at the Jackson Wink MMA Academy as she prepares for a professional MMA debut. Shields, who is 10-0 in her pro boxing career, recently signed with the PFL and will make her professional MMA debut with the organization later this year. Expectations are high for Shields, who is record-breaking and reigning multiple-time world boxing champion, as well as Olympic gold medalist. During a recent chat with Essentially Sports, Shields opened up about training at Jackson Wink MMA Academy. She goes on to say, "At first, I was just going to meet the coaches, just to do a low training and just see what the game plan was for me. And the game plan was just to strengthen my weaknesses, which was also my game plan. I wasn't coming into MMA like, oh, my boxing is so superb, I'm gonna go use boxing and blow these girls to dust. I actually am open-minded and I'm realistic, and I'm coming to terms very, very quickly that MMA with so many different mixed martial arts, and it's best for me to be good at all of them. Like, I'm great at boxing, so that's one less thing to worry about." As well as our coaches, Shields credits UFC stars Jon Jones and Holly Holm for helping her out in the transition to MMA. She goes on to say, and I quote, "But jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, freaking wrestling. I want to get good at all those things. Like, I learned so much at the Jackson Wink Academy with Coach Jackson, Coach Wink from Johnny Jones, from Holly Holmes. I've been able to just do some kickboxing drills with Holly, been able to just learn some really good combinations, and just like the basics of kicking and the body motion, everything from Johnny Bones, and also learn how to defend takedowns. Shields is expected to return to Jackson Wink MMA Academy in the near future to resume training in preparation for her MMA debut. She'll be competing at the 155-pound lightweight division. I still remember an interview that Coach Jackson had, to which he was talking about how Clarissa Shields' potential and her overall ceiling for the game of mixed martial arts is incredibly high. He's recounted that she came to the gym, she worked out, and she just got everything very quickly, faster than anybody that he's ever seen. So Clarissa Shields, she is, a fight athlete already. She's not some newbie. She's a newbie coming to the world of MMA, but she's not a newbie in terms of combat sports. So I can see Clarissa Shields making a clean transition to mixed martial arts. Carissa Segala versus Taylor Starling set for Bare Knuckle FC Knucklemania on February 5th. A women's bare knuckle boxing fight between Carissa Segala and Taylor Starling has been made official for the upcoming Bare Knuckle FC Knucklemania event on February the 5th. Segala, who is 4-2 in her MMA career, will be making her debut for BKFC. The 36-year-old has found some success in MMA, competing for Combate Americas and Gladiator Challenge. All 4 of her career wins come by the way of stoppages. Starling, who is 1-1 in her MMA career, 1-1 in her pro boxing career, will also be making her BKFC debut. The 24-year-old has previously competed in MMA, boxing, and kickboxing. All of Starling's professional wins come by the way of finishes. Meanwhile, BKFC's Britton Hart reacts to being announced as the main event for Knucklemania, and she promised to get a finish over Paige Van Zandt. So Britton Hart returns to the ring on February the 5th at BKFC's Knucklemania event when she battles former UFC star Paige Van Zandt. Britton Hart reacts to this on her Instagram page saying, "Well, here it goes. Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji. It's not often you see women feature as the main event. I had the opportunity once and barely fell short. I'm here for #redemption and to take what I have worked so hard for and make it right. It's in my mind, heart, and soul not to give up. And now I'm not leaving it to the judges. The world will see the best fight. Britton Hart has had yet. Fire emoji. #Here Rise." So Hart, who is 4-4-3 in her pro boxing career, 1-2 in bare knuckle boxing, will make her third appearance for BKFC after recently picking up her first promotional win this past November against Randy and Elcombe. As well as fighting for BKFC, Hart also actively competes in professional boxing competition. Paige Van Zandt, who's 8-5 in her pro MMA career, will be making her BKFC debut. Juliana Velazquez has re-signed with Bellator MMA. Bellator MMA signs undefeated flight champion Juliana Velazquez to a new multi-fight deal. Velasquez, who was undefeated 11-0, is without doubt one of Bellator's biggest stars right now. The 34-year-old captured the organization's flyweight title last month after defeating Lima Mcfarlane via unanimous decision. Fighting out of Brazil, Velasquez has looked absolutely unstoppable since signing with the promotion back in 2017 and owns victories over Alejandra Lara, Bruna Ellen, and Christina Williams. It seems Bellator is very high on her right now, and Scott Coker earlier this month mentioned that he would be interested in booking a rematch between Velasquez and Leigh Mcfarlane later this year. And I'm actually, when I saw that fight, I was very underwhelmed by Mcfarlane. It's so surprising because I've seen Mcfarlane do a lot more better in other fights, Leigh Mcfarlane, and it felt like, I don't know what's going on with Mcfarlane as to why she struggled so much against Velasquez. You would think Leigh Mcfarlane would be able to go shooting for takedowns and be able to control her opponent a lot more, but that really didn't happen here. She was way too passive, and by the point she was going aggressive, actually, it was a little too late, and Velasquez pretty much beat her out in terms of pure attrition there. So I'd like to see a rematch between the two women. I would absolutely love to go see a rematch between these two. Amanda Ribas' father opens up about frustrations with Carla Esparza. Showcase tattoos commemorating his daughter's first UFC win. Amanda Ribas' father has opened up about his frustrations with former Strawweight champ Carla Esparza, as well as showcasing a tattoo commemorating his daughter's UFC win. So Ribas, who is 10-1, is without doubt a breakout star for the UFC's women's strawweight division. Having picked up several marquee victories, the 27-year-old owns notable victories over Mackenzie Dern, Randa Marcos, and Paige Van Zandt. During a recent chat with MMA Fighting, Amanda Ribas' father, Marcelo Ribas, showcased his new tattoo. He goes on to say, "This tattoo is very important for me. It was my biggest accomplishment yet, professionally speaking, because I almost had 3 shots at having someone in the UFC, and it never worked out well. And all of a sudden, Amanda got in. Her first fight was 2 years after that doping case and everything we went through. It was very important for me, so I decided to eternalize that victory on my arm. The night she showed the world who she was. The victory was impressive. It was a first round near rear naked choke victory over Emily Whitmore at the UFC on ESPN3 event. By the way, Emily Whitmore, she'll be fighting against my favorite, Hannah Cyphers. And we got 2 women here who did really poor for themselves in the past 2 years and are hoping to go rebound back their MMA career. So Ribas was originally scheduled to make her UFC debut back in 2017, but tested positive for Austrian and was thus met with a 2-year ban. During May of 2019, her suspension was terminated by USADA after finding out that her test failure was a result of contaminated supplements. As well as having his daughter's first UFC win tattooed on his arm, he also has a tattoo of the UFC belt beneath it. Marcelo Ribas says his daughter plans on capturing both the UFC Strawweight and the flyweight titles, but its plans have been delayed due to former UFC Strawweight champion Carla Esparza. He goes on to say that everybody knows we're going after 2 belts, the Strawweight and flyweight titles. The first goal is the Strawweight belt. Unfortunately, Carla Esparza didn't want to fight and postponed it for us. We are planning on fighting in September and again December, and we have waited for a long time because of her." And yeah, these 2 were meant to fight each other last month, but then Esparza pulled out, and it's weird that she's being rewarded, despite the fact that she pulled out from a really big fight from a top prospect. So, I understand the frustrations from Ribas' camp, but you know what? It happens. And so, a Strawweight fight for UFC 259 has been booked. So, a Strawweight fight between Livina Souza and Amanda Lemos set for UFC 259 on March 6th. As first reported by Rafael Moreno of Combate, a Strawweight contest between Livina Souza and Amanda Lemos has been booked for UFC 259 March 6. Souza, who is 14-2 in her MMA career, will be making her 5th appearance for the organization, following a 3-1 run in which she has picked up wins over Alex Chambers, Sarah Frota, and Ashley Yoder, but lost via unanimous decision to Brianna Van Buren. The 29-year-old is a former Invicta FC Strawweight champion, and being a former Invicta champion coming to the UFC, I don't know why a lot of them are tendency of struggling. I don't get it. You think they're doing really well for themselves in Invicta, they'll be able to make the transition really well for themselves when they go to the UFC. Junior Foray is one of them, but Kay Hansen, she's making the transition really well for herself. So for Lemos, though, she is 8-1 in her MMA career, will be making her 4th appearance for the UFC, but her 3rd appearance since moving down from bantamweight to strawweight. The 33-year-old has looked unstoppable since moving down 2 weight classes to 115 pounds, picking up a first-round submission victory over Miranda Granger and a dominant decision victory over Mizuki Inoue. UFC 259 will take place on Saturday, March 6, 2021. The events, we're not sure, it could be at Fire Island or it can be at the UFC Apex facility building. Meanwhile, Kat Zingano, who made her Bellator MMA debut this past September, defeating Gabriel Holloway via unanimous decision, the 30-year-old, who owns a notable career wins over the likes of Man Nunes and Michi Tate, is a fan favorite in the women's featherweight division, with many tipping her as a future title challenger for the Bellator 145-pound champ, Cris Cyborg. On Thursday night, when asked by a fan when she'll be fighting next, Kat Zingano responded on Thursday night saying, "I asked for February." So we could see Kat Zingano compete at some point in February, which is interesting, because if you look to the Bellator main site right now, we're unsure when there will be another Bellator event. There was supposed to be a Bellator event on January 1st, and then that got scrapped. If you go to the Bellator, I said at the time of this recording here, if you go look at the Bellator site, they're still unsure of when there's going to be another Bellator event happening. So I'm not sure of what to expect from Bellator. I really am not. I do know Scott Coker and other fighters are really hyped and excited for 2021. It is expected that the year of 2021 will be the best financial year for Bellator since 2015. But you know what? Until I see the actual events here, there's a lot of momentum and optimism for Bellator, but I need to go and see it. Former UFC strawweight champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk determined to continue as a strawweight despite struggling to make 115 pounds. During a recent chat with MMA News, Joanna Jędrzejczyk opened up about the difficulty she's endured on making 115 pounds strawweight limit, but is adamant she wants to stay in the division. She goes on to say, "It's not easy to make 115 for me. I had to struggle myself for 2 to 3 months while preparing for fights, but it's not easy. But it's part of my job. I have been working with Clint from the UFC Performance Center, that he is the master. It's not easy, but it's easier. Every weight cut has had an impact on me, my body, my brain. I am a woman. I want to have kids someday, and I have to be careful with it. But I want to fight in the UFC's women's strawweight division." So at 150 pounds, she is considered one of the greatest of all time. I say she is the greatest women's strawweight of all time. But you know what? She says she is struggling, but she successfully made 115 pounds for years. She's made the 115 pound cut for many years, and if you look at it, it's not really making that much of an impact on her in performances. She's not. She's one of those fighters who's been able to be consistent, although she is struggling with the weight cut. She's not ever failed a weight cut, which is surprising because she's always detailed about, oh man, it's so hard, it's so difficult. Yeah, it's so hard and so difficult, but she's always making the weight cut in time, and she's pulling out these stellar performances consistently for years. That, you know what, I'm impressed that Joanna Jędrzejczyk can be as good as she is. Now, she did fight one time at flyweight, where she fought against Valentina Shevchenko, and I do believe strawweight is the best division for Joanna. I think she doesn't have the advantages of length and size and reach that she normally does when she competes at flyweight. She can go and get those advantages at strawweights. She only had one fight at the flyweight division. It didn't work out well for her. I understand as to why she would go stay at 115 pounds, but as she gets older and as time goes on and she wants to go and fight a more relaxed schedule, then I can definitely see at some point in the future, maybe 1 or 2 years from now, that Joanna Jędrzejczyk will go compete at flyweight. Then we'll see new matchups. I would love to see Mackenzie Dern versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That's a personal dream fight that I would love to go see, but only time can tell. Also, it is about time for the undefeated Tatiana Saurez to make a return back to the UFC for 2021. She reveals the timeline for a return fight. Tatiana Saurez, during a recent fan Q&A with Laura Senko, UFC President Dana White revealed that Scary Saurez, yeah, that's her nickname, is gearing up for a big comeback. He says, "She hit me up the other day. Her neck is much better. She's looking for a comeback soon. She's scary." Saurez, who has been compared to UFC lightweight champ Khabib Nurmagomedov, confirming the news during a recent chat with MMA Junkie, and revealed she's looking at a summer 2021 return. In a recent interview that Tatiana Saurez had with MMA Junkie, she was compared to Khabib Nurmagomedov. Good on you for that. But here's what she said, and I quote, "Yes, my team and I are thinking summer. At first, I thought spring, but I want to make sure my neck will make it through a camp before committing to a fight. I tried to spar and my neck was hurt after a few rounds, so I cut the session. But slowly but surely, I'm introducing live training back in." So Tatiana Saurez will be making a return at some point in summer. I'm excited for it though, and it's been a while since I've seen Tatiana Saurez fight and compete, so it'll be refreshing seeing her yet again. You are listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back after the short break here. See you soon.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back, continuing on with the news brief here. So Tatiana Saurez, she's aiming for a big comeback this year. Another fighter aiming for a big comeback, hopefully towards the direction of winning, will be Karolina Koalawicks. She announces that she's ready for her UFC return, eyeing for March or April in a comeback fight. Karolina Koalawicks, she is 12-6 in her MMA career, was last in action during February 2020 when she lost via unanimous decision to Yan Xinan, following the defeat. Karolina Kowalkiewicz admitted, "For the first time in my life, I cannot say I'm okay." After it emerged, she suffered a broken bone under her right eye. The loss put the 35-year-old on a 4-fight losing streak after previously dropping bouts to Alexa Grasso, Michelle Waterson, and Jessica Andrade. During which chat with Polish publication MMA Rocks, Karolina Kowalkiewicz announced she is ready for a comeback and is looking for a March or April 2021 return. So right now, I don't think Karolina Kowalkiewicz has made it official as to who she wants to go fight. She wants to go for a return. She wants to go for a big return. And we look at Karolina Kowalkiewicz here. She was a title challenger for a reason. She went on a big winning streak, and then she started going on this losing streak here, sadly. And the people she lost to were really darn good. Alexa Grasso, Michelle Waterson, Jessica Andrade. We got former champions and former title contenders here. So it's not like Karolina Kowalkiewicz, oh man, she's having a really bad run here. No, I would say she's having a run that's not good enough compared or relative to the top fighters in the UFC. But she's definitely still top 10 quality. And looking at Kayla Kowalkiewicz in her bout against Yan Xiaonan, this definitely was kind of a good thing for her to go take this break. I think Kayla Kowalkiewicz her trajectory was upwards 3 years ago. Now it's going on a downhill slope here. And I believe Karolina Kowalkiewicz, her striking ability and her patience and her, she felt unmotivated, honestly, in her fight against Yan. I've seen Karolina Kowalkiewicz just get in there and scrap with people. She prefers the scrap fights. But as of lately, her fight against Yan specifically, even with Waterson, Waterson fights perfectly Karolina Kowalkiewicz style. And she shouldn't be losing to these fighters, except for maybe Yan. But Karolina, she's been going down lately. And this break she's had for a year, I think it'll be a good thing for her. I think she's going to be mentally right. She's recovering from injuries. And I expect good things coming from both her and Tatyana Saurez. So, for those of you who don't know, last week, Kayla Harrison, she ended up talking about she called herself the GOAT. And, obviously, I cannot call her the GOAT. Many people can call her the GOAT of women's mixed martial arts. But Kayla Harrison, she has to be the best women's 155-pounder right now in the world. That is what I'm saying there. I'm not saying she's the best women's fighter in the world. I'm saying she's the best 155-pounder in the world. I highly doubt that the UFC and Women's Championships are going to have a lightweight women's division right now, especially considering that the UFC's featherweight division right now is currently floundering. But Cris Cyborg, she is unimpressed with the level of competition Kayla Harrison has had in fighting, even to move up to 155-pound and give her a real match. So, Bellator champ Cris Cyborg is unimpressed with the level of competition of PFL's Kayla Harrison, has been fighting, and is keen to move one day up to a more comfortable weight class of lightweight and challenge her. Cris Cyborg, who's 23-2, is the reigning featherweight champion over at Bellator after capturing the organization's 145-pound belt from Julia Budd in January of last year. The 35-year-old went on to defend the title against Elena Blenko this past October. Meanwhile, Kayla Harrison has been reigning supreme over the 155-pound lightweight division in PFL and was the organization's top 2019 champion. In 2020, the PFL was on hiatus due to COVID-19, so Kayla Harrison took a step back at 145 with the Invicta FC. Harrison put on a showcase dominating Courtney King for the round 2 KO win. During a recent chat with James Lynch on The Catch-Up, Cris Cyborg was asked about what she thinks of Kayla Harrison successfully making 145 pounds. The Brazilian says Kayla Harrison is fighting women below her skill level and admits her dream is to one day move up to a more comfortable weight class at 155 pounds and fight her. She goes on to say, and I quote, "I saw that she make the weight. I didn't watch the fights, but a couple of fights I've seen her. I believe she's fighting girls below her skill level. The girls are not on her level, but she's doing great. If this is a strategy for a manager, of course she's going to get it. But I believe this year she's going to fight for PFL, the tournament at 155 pounds. If she is the champion of this tournament, for sure I would like to have a match with her. I believe all the fans would want to watch that." She continues, "I would like to go up to 155 pounds. Before I retire, I want to help build the division. Let's see if she'd like to do a real match with me. I never had the opportunity to fight at 155 pounds. All the people tell me to go low, go low, go low. For me, I walk at 170, 175. 155 would be better than 145. I never had a chance to do so, But for sure, this is one dream that can come true. Do I believe Cris Cyborg can definitely be dominant 155? I would argue that Cris Cyborg would be a lot more powerful, would be the Cris Cyborg that we're used to seeing, or the Cris Cyborg that we most know, the one that was like dominating working people, like the scariest woman on earth, the one woman who were saying, oh man, Ronda Rousey, Cris Cyborg, what would happen if those two were to fight? That would be 155-pound Cris Cyborg. I currently think right now the current iteration of Cris Cyborg is definitely not as good as the one that was dominating other women 5 years ago. But I believe here, Kayla Harrison versus Cris Cyborg, who would win in that bout then? Who would win? When I reviewed Kayla Harrison's fight against Blanco, I saw her and I was like, oh my goodness, this woman is huge. Kayla Harrison easily looks like she could dominate, ragdoll, and throw around women everywhere. She can dominate you with her wrestling. She is strong enough to go knock you down. And for Cris Cyborg versus Kayla Harrison, I would actually put my money right now. If we're talking about the current iterations of them, Kayla Harrison would win that bout. She would. Cris Cyborg has a tendency of being too much of a headhunter, and not much of a two-head. Not just that, she's also too much of a headhunter while being an accurate, very passive, safe fighter now. Now, although she can be all aggro and wreck and dominate her opponents with her physicality, I don't think she can get away with that on Kayla Harrison. I think Kayla Harrison is too much of an aggro fighter, and it's going to easily overwhelm Cris Cyborg, and Cris Cyborg can panic, and she'll be dropped by the wrestling and by the takedowns. And for as good of a jiu-jitsu grappler Cris Cyborg is, she never had to go utilize that jiu-jitsu game on other fighters. She never has. She's always been a fighter who's always been, okay, I'm the dominant one, I'm the stronger one. She never really utilized her grappling game, but she never really needs to. Even now, she doesn't really need to. You need to do that in Bellator. But for Kayla Harrison, she's one of the women who I can say, alright, Kayla Harrison, she takes you down. I don't see Cris Cyborg having the actual physical advantage over her. I don't see... here's the thing. I really believe, in terms of the pure physicals, Kayla Harrison is stronger and tougher than Cris Cyborg. Now, if we're talking about Cris Cyborg from 5 years ago, then this bout here will be a close one. Heck, I would conceivably see betting odds going towards, alright, Cris Cyborg being able to get one clean uppercut in onto Kayla Harrison as Harrison tried to go and clinch in or try to go for a takedown. I can see that. Now, will this fight happen? Not really sure. We really can't predict the future all that much, but I would love to see these, like, Cris Cyborg, especially lately, has been really forward on the idea of having cross-promotion matchups. She wants to go fight Amanda Nunes again. That ain't gonna happen. Weili Zhang versus Zhang Nan, that's another fight that's out there that people want to go see. That's not gonna happen. The UFC just doesn't do cross-promotion. Dana White, he sees Scott Coker and Bellator as like, what's the point? Someone asked Dana White what his opinion and view was on cross-promotion battling and fights, and he thought to himself, you know what? What's the point? Is there any dream matchups out there for UFC fighters? And to him, he doesn't think so. I think there's some dream matchups there I can see. I think Zhang Weili would be versus Juliana Velazquez would be a great bout to see. Amanda Nunes versus Cris Cyborg at 155 pounds or at 145 pounds would be an interesting matchup. That's a real toss of the coin there on you're not sure on who's really exactly going to win that bout. But there are definitely dream matchups here. Kayla Harrison, will she make her way to the UFC or for Bellator? Well, she needs to go drop to 145 pounds. She can do it. Now, will she be able to drop to 135 pounds? To bantamweight? Can I see Kayla Harrison compete at bantamweight and maintain that raw power that she has, those physicals? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a while till we see Kayla Harrison compete at the UFC or even at Bellator. I would love to see Kayla Harrison be like the 145 champion at One Championships. I think that would be totally awesome. But I can't predict the future, and I wish there was more cross-promotion stuff happening. But as of right now, no signs are pointing towards that direction. So I said earlier in the podcast here that I find it very off-putting that Carla Esparza might be given a title fight against Zhang Weili, considering the fact that she dropped out of a fight against Amanda Ribas. but she might be rewarded for a title fight. What's going on here? It should be given to Rose Namajunas. Well, Rose Namajunas goes on to say that she is ready to reclaim the UFC Strawweight title, says she's been studying Weili Zhang for a while. Former UFC Strawweight champion Rose Namajunas is more motivated than ever to reclaim the belt she once held. Namajunas, who's 9-4, shocked the world, defeating Joanna Jędrzejczyk back in 2017 during a recent appearance in UFC Unfiltered. Namajunas made it clear that she is ready for a challenge for the title as soon as possible and revealed she has been studying Zhang Weili for a while. Note, as soon as possible. Okay then. She goes on to say, I quote, I've been watching Weili ever since I saw her fight with TC Torres a while back. I started to have an eye on her, especially ever since she became champion. I've been scouting her out and breaking her down. Game planning for her because, yeah, she's got the belt. That's really what I have to go off of. Now, Rose Namajunas says that losing the title to Jessica Andrade via getting dropped on her head did affect her, but she feels much better now that she has corrected the mistake and avenged the loss. She goes on to say, and I quote, somebody dropping you on the head like that's not cool, man. I gotta fix that mistake because I can't go around walking around the streets knowing that could possibly happen again. I need to fix that mistake and I need to make those adjustments and make sure that I'll protect myself from here on out. So I corrected that mistake, I put that behind me, and I'm ready for the belts. So Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas, that's the belt we want to see. Rose says as soon as possible. According to Dana White's camp, they're kind of negotiating. It might not be as soon as possible. I would love to see these two go at it. I would love to see it. I would love to see Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang. That fight could be a fight of the year contender, more so than Carla Esparza or Weili Zhang or Carla Esparza versus Rose Namajunas. Carla Esparza is not the most exciting fight out there in the world, but she's definitely one of the most dangerous ones out there. And if Carla Esparza does get thrown in there in the mix of Namajunas, of Joanna Jędrzejczyk, of Zhang Weili, Carla Esparza is a dark horse, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point this year she does get a title fight and she could potentially become the world champion yet again. That's a real possibility. I don't think many fans and even the UFC would want to see that, but she could be champion again. And with UFC coming up this weekend, this Saturday, January 16, one fighter withdrew from Fight Island and is set to undergo surgery. Former bantamweight title challenger Beth Correia has pulled out of a scheduled UFC Fight Island bout. According to MMA Fighting, Correia will need to undergo surgery to remove her appendix and thus can no longer compete. Yikes. The 37-year-old was scheduled to battle Yanan Wu on January 16 and was touted as Correia's last dance after announcing plans to retire from the sport earlier this year. It has not been made clear as to whether the UFC will seek to find a replacement for the fighter to step up against Yanan Wu, who is 11-3 right now, also known as Milan. Wu has lost 2 over the last 3 bouts after dropping decisions against Mizuki Inoue and Gino Mazzini, but winning submission victory over Lauren Miller. Correia, who's 11-5, has lost 3 over the last 4 bouts here, and I highly doubt that we'll see Correia ever again. I really believe that. It's sad that this is Beth Correia's last opportunity was taken away from her because she had to go and do surgery. It's upsetting and sad that we're not going to see Beth Correia, go out at Fight Island with her arms raised. She's going off from a loss from CR Eubanks. That's very upsetting. But, you know what? She's going to have surgery. We may have seen Beth Correia's last bout, but she made a whole lot of money competing at the UFC. She competed for the title back in 2015. She is a trailblazer. So whatever happens to the future of Beth Correia, whether she is truly committed to retiring or she's going to make a comeback after the appendix surgery, it's all on her. But once again, there will be a UFC event happening this Saturday, the return of Fight Island. I'm excited for it, and hopefully you guys are all too. And so that'll bring us to a close for today's podcast. You have been a great audience. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Women's Mixed Martial Arts Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.